customer is always right. Harry Gordon Selfridge. This phrase was originally coined in 1909 by Selfridge, the founder of Selfridge's department store in London, typically used by businesses to convince customers they will get good service, and also used by businesses to convince employees to provide good service. But is this phrase an absolute? The premise of the concept is indeed noble, but there's a sense of entitlement that grants to the most sensitive of our brethren. And more businesses are abandoning this mantra because, ironically, it kind of leads to bad service. From the studios at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Charlotte, this is Adrian Brown with As the Buckle Turns. Please, I'm inviting all of you to check me out on Spreaker. You're actually allowed to follow on that platform through your Facebook page. You don't actually have to have a Spreaker account, so you can like, comment, and everything through your other social media accounts on Spreaker. All these things and links to these are always going to be in descriptions to these videos. And please give follows on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and yes, like we mentioned last episode, iTunes. There's now a Facebook group for As the Buckle Turns now as well. Just make sure you seek out our name and make sure you click on the one, you'll see our artwork. If you recognize it by now from the YouTube videos and all the other videos as well, you'll be able to find it. And with growth of this, we'll start posting on, we'll probably make an Instagram and Twitter accounts for it as well. But let's grow the following we have on the current formats. And, as usual, like, share, subscribe, repeat. Leave reviews on iTunes and anything like that. Like I always say, feedback is greatly appreciated. Before I get into the topic from the opening, I'd like to just talk about something real quick that's like a raging inferno of hot takes right now, as far as the usual internet trolling, blogging atmosphere that we normally run into these days is just completely it's an inferno right now on the internet when it comes to takes on this. You're probably not going to get this right now from this place like as normal. Here, things are going to be objective. But a lot of you probably heard about supposedly Daniel Bryan not wanting to re-sign with the WWE. I believe his contract is supposedly going to be running through to September 1st. It depends on what you're reading, where it's from. But here's the thing that you will see now. A lot of articles are saying he wants to spend more time with his family, which is what he was doing while he was semi-retired, if you remember. I mean, he got a chance, he got married, he had himself a nice little girl and everything, and everything would have been fine. All he had to do was just, stay retired and spend time with her, watch her grow and everything. But here's the thing. Daniel Bryan was always such a mark for being a wrestler that it's just one of those things. It defined him so much. He just could not help himself and come back. He missed the adoration of it. He missed the yes chance. But here's the thing. Why all of a sudden now are you talking about wanting to spend more time with your family, but you're not re-signing the contract? But at the other side of your mouth, you're talking about wanting to pick up more dates in other countries? Because here's what I'm guessing is what's going to be going on here with the guy. I think really and truly he's happy to be back, but he's not happy and content being just with this company. Because in general, all he really had to do was just keep the general manager role or whatever, on-screen faux figurehead role he had. He would have had a cushy schedule, not physical, still probably would be able to make it home whenever he could have. But here's the thing, it's just, competing an hour in the Greatest Royal Rumble and things like that, getting his chest marked up to no return in matches like that. competing so much in that gauntlet match that we saw recently on SmackDown Live. He loves that stuff so much, but at the same time, I don't really think he understands what he wants. But I'm gonna speak for myself here, and I'm thinking more than likely, what he really, really wants, and I think what he really, really misses, and because you hear him bring up his time as an independent wrestler a lot, and I really believe he misses those fans and that level of adoration more than anything. So you hear him talking about wanting to wrestle in Japan again and Mexico again, things like that. So what I'm thinking is, really what he wants is basically the Bryan Danielson retirement tour. Hashtag that on social media if you want to. Farewell Danielson Tour or something like that. Because basically when I hear him say stuff like that, if assuming these interviews and things like that are transcribed correctly in these interviews and all these blog posts and things like that, what I'm hearing is he wants like a last hurrah, one last run through CMLL, one last run through ROH, one last run through NJPW. Like I said, and even now they've reunited him with Kane. Well, all I'm seeing when that happened, now I'm starting to see it. It's a return to the Bryan Danielson everybody loved, and he wants everybody to see him perform in those places one last time before he truly rides off to the sunset. Now, that'll probably disappoint a lot of people that are so excited that he's back. But in general, I don't really think the guy's dumb. But if he does re-sign another long-term deal, he's going to have to commit himself to this completely. Because if he doesn't, all this is going to be at the end. You know what Vince does to talent who doesn't, who are basically lame ducks. He's going to job Daniel out, and then these obnoxious fans who we're going to get into in a minute are going to just go even more over the top than they already are right now. As if they could get any more obnoxious. But trust me, I don't think we've seen the true levels at which they can go to just yet. But let this happen, I'm soon it's coming. See, you can't a lot of these people think he should have came back, immediately been thrust into the title picture, probably should have it by now after some ridiculously cool feud with The Miz or something like that. You've seen and heard the obnoxious fantasy booking for this guy the moment his comeback got announced. But think about it now. Imagine if he did have the title right now, and he didn't win it until like around the time that it was time for him to be released. He'd probably try and attempt to pull a Bret Hart and take the belt with him to ROH or something like that. Same thing his boy CM Punk wanted to do, but it wasn't going to happen. Or try to take it overseas or cross the border to Mexico or anything like that on his farewell tour. Trust me, Vince McMahon isn't going to let that happen. Now, I think a lot of you probably know that, with all the obnoxious fantasy booking aside. See, and another thing, I'm going to link this in the description of everywhere this posts. There's an article written, probably, what was it? I'm recording this on a Saturday, so I believe it was recorded. I believe this guy posted this on his website yesterday. I can't remember right now, but you'll see it you'll see it in the description. I found it randomly from a retweet from one of my followers on Twitter. There's a guy by the name of Rob Bonnett. I've got it written down here. I'll link his Twitter, his website, and everything, and the article. And it's probably the best, most profound take on how Daniel Bryan has not been misused, has not been mistreated in his career, as people seem to believe. And no matter how, like I said, if you read this article, you will understand how the obnoxiousness and the myopia of this current crop of fans, how it rose up and how really there was no end game to beyond what Daniel Bryan actually ended up getting. It pretty much, he probably got more than he deserved earlier than a lot of people who think that certain wrestlers are getting more now have gotten. If you, I mean, this guy beat the entirety of the active version of Evolution in one night, and they crowned him at WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans. Now, let's be honest, it was never ever going to go farther than that. That belt was always, those belts at that time were probably going to always come to either Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns. I think we all can agree on that. It wasn't going to be some Hulkamania-esque run for the Yes Movement. It never was. It was a flash in the pan, over the top crowd reaction response, moment, for Vince. And he was just like, you know what, just to shut you all up, here you go. And then his fragility showed, and he had to give the title up in a month or so. So again, there was no end game for the Yes Movement. Just like there is an end game for a lot of things that these people cheer for. Choose things that have staying power. There's no end game for Rusev Day. Just like there was never an end game for Mizdow. You don't get behind things that you know will last and make money. You cling to things that'll give you feel-good moments for a little bit of time, for a flash in the pan. Things that probably make no sense as far as business goes. From an entertainment standpoint, maybe. From a we like to yell it and scream it standpoint, yes. But when you attempt to truly shove that down the throats of people who have common sense, that's the problem. And that's the problem and the point we get to when the customer isn't always right. Because there are agendas out here. Sometimes the customer isn't always right. Sometimes people, they have agendas. Sometimes they maybe not even have agenda. They're just flat out a-holes. They're coming in just to make your day miserable. And you can compare that a lot of times. Like I said, there's so many things in this world you can compare wrestling to. And no matter what especially this current version of wrestling, which is the least cool it's ever been. I've said that before. But the climate of this world right now, and you can understand the way the entitlement of these people, the quote laziness, and the fact that everybody has a presence online, and simply because you have a phone, you're a journalist now. Simply because you have a blog, you're an authority on a subject just because you hashtag certain things and people search it out. You get a few followers, and all of a sudden you think you're more important than you actually are. That's the culture we have right now. Okay. And this feeling that because they are the paying customer, they feel like they're entitled to a little bit more, because there's this feeling that if they're loud and over the top and obnoxious enough, there's this feeling that they made somebody, that they feel they should get more of a say than they actually are getting. And there comes a time when you just can't help it, because a lot of the old school guys that I listen to on these podcasts, and a lot of these older wrestlers and older writers, older bookers, and things like that, I listen to a lot of them because they make more sense. And a lot of them, they have a tendency to bury the fans. But a lot of it's deserved. Because here's the thing. Initially, I thought about it. This podcast was going to be kind of a rant on capitalism relating to the current crop of wrestling. But because here's the thing. The difference, the thing about a capitalistic society and a capitalistic model, that is choice and competition. That is the premise of it. Here's the thing. If you don't like how a business is doing business, you have the ability to take your business elsewhere. And for some reason, when I say something like that, it's just like, well, why can't the business I'm frequenting be better? Well, it's probably, here's the thing. Why would I continue? The better answer to that is with another question. Why would you continue to give a business money that you hate, quote unquote, hate so much, that you consistently, bash so much? Especially if you know there are other companies that you can frequent in that area that you're trying to, acquire services from. Okay. And here's the thing: there's probably that other business that you have an opportunity to frequent. They might actually give you what you want, because I'm sorry, I know some people don't like political talk, but whatever. There's a semblance of laziness at times. Like, I can remember when, some of you here who are my American listeners will probably remember back, there was something called the Tea Party. Okay, the Tea Party didn't decide to start their own party. They decided to infiltrate and take over a failing brand that was the Republican Party. That's laziness. This is what these fans are doing right now. They're attempting to take over a company that's somewhat, dropping in ratings right now, but is still making money. They want to take over this instead of taking their business to another company and making that more popular. Okay, don't infiltrate something that's probably, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Don't infiltrate something that's considered sinking, because you're probably going to sink your intentions with it as well. Okay, choice and competition. And here's the thing: if you don't go to the other competition that WWE actually has, what you're basically admitting to yourself is this: WWE's competition does suck. No matter, as much as you're putting over certain things, like people are constantly saying Impact's ratings are improving. Impact's ratings fluctuate all the time, depending on who's writing the show. We all know this. As much as you're putting over New Japan, you're still showing up to WWE shows and writing about WWE shows more than you're writing about New Japan. You're still tweeting more about it. So in a way, as much as you may like other products, you're still admitting they're garbage, because no matter what it is, you're still talking more about the product that you're coming and trying to be more obnoxious about. Nobody comes to those shows to listen to you. They don't. Nobody comes to hear your chants. Nobody comes to hear you complain and boo a certain wrestler, because they are probably cheering that guy, whether you want to admit it or not. Nobody wants to see you, bully kids and attempt to take their signs away for liking certain guys or girls. Nobody wants to see you do that. The show isn't about you. And nobody tunes into these shows on television to see you either. Take your business elsewhere. And this is where sometimes the customer is wrong. And no matter how much we want to believe that the customer is always right, when you actually type this in on Google about the quote, I found a couple of articles about, and they both list the same thing. There are 5 reasons why the customer is wrong. And I started looking through all 5 reasons and the way they were explaining it. I started thinking about how each one of these could probably, in a way, relate to wrestling. And I swear it's just that's how far and uncool and unhip and untopical, just not up to date that wrestling is. You can relate it to so much stuff. Initially, it was so far out the box that you couldn't relate it to anything. You couldn't relate it to Hollywood. You couldn't relate it to movies. It's though they would play off certain things. Like I said, it was constantly, when wrestling was doing what it was supposed to do, it was always its own world. It became its own animal. It existed in its own, dimension. But now, because it's devolved to the point it is right now, you can almost slide anything into it and relate anything to it. And that lets you know how far it's fallen. Reason number one, it makes the employees unhappy when you believe the customer's always right. And you can see that a lot of times too. You can hear the frustration sometimes when you listen to these wrestlers talk about the fans. You can see them throwing shade on Twitter, on any social media. And you can just see them, when they're out in their regular lives, and you hear these fans talking about, so-and-so didn't sign an autograph from me, because they were with their family and things like that. Look, you people are so entitled. You make these people, you always make their lives miserable when they're in the ring, because majority of the time you're not even paying attention. You're probably, live tweeting from the show. You're probably you're like vlogging from the show. You're not even paying attention to what's going on in the ring. And they're out there buzzing their humps for you after you done paid a ticket. I mean, they've already got your money. Attempt to enjoy the show and act accordingly. But instead, you'd rather just, chant two sweets, which have nothing to do with, what's going on in the match. You'd rather chant wrestlers who quit name rather than just enjoying the guys and girls who are in the match. Probably sometimes in matches with guys you claim to like. You make these guys miserable. And they're just like, why are they going out there to bust their humps for you? And sometimes you wonder why they give lackluster effort sometimes. Why should they? When you're out there giving them, you're not even giving them according reactions. Number two, it gives abrasive customers an unfair advantage. What that means is this. A lot of times, again, this is where that fringe mentality comes in handy. And this is how it relates again to the media when it comes to things like politics. When you're louder and more obnoxious, you're constantly pushing back. You're constantly you drown out the people who are more sane than you are. Here's the thing. And a lot of times the people who may actually like what's going on, no matter what the company is, the hardcores and whatnot, they will always, since they're so loud, they will drown out the voices of the people who are actually giving constructive criticism, not people who are jumping up and down and stomping their feet because they're not getting their way. And because of that, because you got these multiple Twitter accounts and multiple Facebook accounts and things like that, you're constantly going to have an unfair advantage over the people who are just being more civil about the situation, who are offering ideas, and maybe like, okay, I like say something like, I like what you did here. Okay, keep doing that. Something like that might not actually get filtered through, as opposed to the people who are constantly tweeting or posting, this sucked. Why do you keep pushing this guy? Why don't you push that girl? Why don't you book it this way? This is what I would have done. Insert fantasy booking here. That's a little unfair. And I know some of you would probably say, well, why don't they just push themselves, push their ideas out there a little bit harder? Okay, why don't you just understand, there are sometimes the company can't filter out everything, but you have an unfair advantage because you're constantly in their face. But a lot of times they won't listen to you anyway because you're not offering it, constructively. You see what I'm saying? It gives you an unfair advantage over the people that actually do care in a way, but they're just, like I said, it's not that serious to the casual fan. It's a little bit more serious to you because, again, this is all you know. This is what you're in 100% of the time, and that's all you know, and that's all you think you're going to do. See, people that aren't as deep in the bubble as you are, they're going to offer it constructively, and they're just going to leave it at that. And they just like, oh, okay, I hope this gets to them. And then they just go about their business. And speaking of business, some customers, this is what number 3 says, some customers are simply bad for business. And this is where it gets a little iffy sometimes, when we believe that sometimes certain establishments have the ability to simply turn away certain people. I get a little iffy about that sometimes, being a black man, when it comes to there are certain people who probably wouldn't want to serve me out in public, because honestly, I'm not even a fan sometimes of WWE and Impact or whoever taking certain signs away from people because they say certain things. I mean, think about it. I mean, initially the crowd used to be littered with signs, but I can just imagine it was probably miserable for the people sitting behind a lot of those people who are holding up these enormous signs at times. So sometimes they can get obnoxious. But there are just certain people who come in, who you allow in, who you invite into your business, who are just simply not going to further your business any better. They're simply going to drive away your real customers. The customers you know are going to be loyal. The customers you know are going to continue to come back. And the customers who are just simply, maybe even they're just a one-time and a one-off. But if they just see a certain group of people, like a lot of times, people are taking their children to these shows. And a lot of times they're not even coming back because they simply just cannot take what's going on around them. There's bullying. There's people throwing drinks on it. There are people that are just drunk and yelling obscenities. And just because, again, they think the show is about them. And the moment you let that element in, and again, to quote Disco Inferno, this is what happens. This is what happened when you allow that ECW crowd to get over the top and get into and permeate your business. That was the initial monster that Paul Heyman created. And again, I respect that man. But the level of fan he created in those Philadelphia bingo halls, what they've evolved into now has caused a devolution into where we are now. And once you allow that element in and you allow them to go unchecked, that becomes a problem to the people who actually come to just simply have a good time. To just simply okay, hey, let's just go to a show. And they're everywhere now. Initially, you thought it was just like a mid-East Coast thing, but it's like they spread out and I don't know, it's just like once the internet became more popular, you realize, well, maybe it was more than just those people at the ECW arena. And now that they're in, I don't think they're going to be able to go anywhere. Now they've evolved to the NXT crowd. Now they've evolved into that bunch. Of course, and majority of them probably went to ROH, and majority of them have probably it's probably the American fan base of things like PWG, in an American portion of New Japan, the American portion of that fandom, and that's crazy. And it's like the more you can see these people permeate the crowds into like normal shows that you used to see, the more traditionalist type shows, and you can like the moment you hear them in the crowd chanting certain things, my ears start screaming. And you can see the people around them like, what the heck is wrong with these people? Number 4, it results in worse customer service. And what that would, if you can relate that to wrestling, I thought about this when I read that one. I remember there was this match between Cena and Orton. I know a lot of you probably roll your eyes at that. Of course, those guys have wrestled too many times. Whatever, they're both all-time greats. Let them have at it. But I remember one match. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe 2014, something like that. I remember one time the crowd was just crapping on the match so bad. And it's just, I can just remember there was just one part where each of them would just stop and just look at the crowd like, what the heck is going on here? And initially, and then eventually I can just tell they both were just like calling it, and they were just like, F it. And eventually they just start doing trolling moves. They started doing each other's finishers on each other. And it made it even worse than the fans actually probably thought it was. And that's, like I said, a lot of times the more you rag on someone when you're out in public, when you're like, if you're not giving the person a chance to resolve the issue in customer service, they're just really just going to brush you off and make it worse. As somebody who worked in a restaurant business for as long as I did, even I had done that before. when I saw that the person was just difficult to deal with, or the group or whatever was difficult to deal with, especially when I was waiting tables, eventually I would just get into I don't care mode. And sometimes when you don't understand, when you're out there in that crowd and you're acting a certain way, you leave them no choice but to act a certain way as well. And then you're going to complain that you got crappy matches or something like that. But again, you won't go home and watch the replay and see how you acted to cause this. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies as fans, but the people who call that out get called out for it instead of the people who are on these YouTube shows who get angry at said podcasters like me calling these people out for doing that. Again, it goes back to what I constantly say. Act accordingly, the show will get better. Nobody cares that you want to come in and cheer the lower actor in the play. Okay? But here's the thing. The show was going to book the lead actor the way it wants to. You can root for the actor that plays the bit role all you want to. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. But don't ruin the show for people who came to see the lead actor. Okay? You wouldn't do that at a play. So please, don't do that when it comes to wrestling. I don't care how much you want 15-minute spot fest and your favorite guy that you think you made from insert indie promotion here on the show to have a higher spot on the card. You just be thankful you got to see the person. That's what you should be thankful for. Until then, the more you sit there and you crap on it, these guys aren't going to give you 100% effort until you start acting accordingly. And last but not least, number 5. Some customers are just plain wrong. And I don't think there's really much to say about that. You may think you're right all the time, but let's be honest here. One, the company really does not care about what you think because you don't do what they do. You don't see the numbers that they see. You may see and hear certain things that you get reported from your favorite little Cage Side Seats article or something like that. But you really don't understand what goes on into running a business unless you actually do run one. Okay? Sometimes you are just plain wrong. No matter how much you think you know the insides of this, no matter how much you think if you book this wrestler to wrestle against that wrestler that it'll bring in more ratings, sometimes you are just plain wrong. No matter how much you believe that if you put the belt, the top title, on a certain guy as opposed to another guy, that it'll bring in more viewers, you don't know that because you're not there. Sometimes you are just plain wrong. You understand? Because this is the thing. Sometimes the customer is not always right. Sometimes the customer is just a plain jerk. Sometimes, again, the customer has an agenda. And sometimes it's probably more important that the company doesn't play into that agenda and simply lets that customer fade away. They want to come keep giving me money. I wouldn't shut them out. If you want to come and complain, have at it, Hoss, because I've already got your money. And there's nothing you can do about it after that fact. No matter how much you rage, no matter how many dumb signs you bring, no matter how much you ruin the show for somebody else. But when it comes to the point where you make my employees unhappy, you drown out my well-meaning customers, and you start ruining my business on television or in the public eye, then we'd have a problem. And problems will get solved one way or another. That's it. You have the option to take your business elsewhere if you so choose. This is a land of choice. Make the right one. That's as the buckle turns for this week, everybody. I just thank everybody for tuning in. A new episode drops every Saturday, if possible, unless I tweet otherwise or you hear me say otherwise on social media. But until then, please give us a like, follow, subscribe, share. Please do all that. See you next week on As the Buckle Turns.